Hello, I am an old fart, and I have a guilty pleasure. I like knives. I'm not an expert or an official representative of anybody, I just like knives. I collect small folding pocket knives, and for over a year you've been joining me on a tour through my collection. At the last video I said I was nearing the end of the collection, and in fact I was wrong. I was actually at the end of the collection. I didn't realize it. And I found myself for the last couple of weeks with no additional video to release. So, welcome to the having caught up with the collection. We are now at the point where there will be a new video every now and then when I acquire a new knife, which is not that often. I warned you about this. It is not weekly. The weekly videos came from catching up on decades of collecting. So now we'll be down to a couple of times a year when I happen to acquire something that I like and want to share with you. There'll be a couple of other videos over the next while, as well as I have some things that I don't really consider part of my collection, but I'll video them. Some things that aren't quite knives, but I'll video them. So anyway, for today, we're looking at this. This is a James Wayland knife. And it's tempting to say James Brand Wayland knife because there's a bit of confusion over that name. I'll come back to that in a second. Knives from James have been on my list for quite some time, but they haven't really been the highest priority because some of them that I was aware of had some design elements that didn't quite match my interests. Some are quite expensive and were harder to justify and so on, but they have quite a range of products, and I came across this one, which I liked the looks of. The appearance suited me, the materials suited me, the price point was right, and so I thought I'd give this a try as my first James knife. So this is a Wayland, W-A-Y-L-A-N-D, from James. Now, what is actually the name? So as far as I can tell, the name of the manufacturer is James. The reason I say that there's some confusion is that in a lot of their online stuff, it always says James Brand. And I was never really sure whether that meant that Brand was a proper noun, first name James, last name Brand, or did it just mean the James brand, the same as the Nike brand, and so on. But their website, for example, is the James Brand. So for a while I thought maybe James Brand was the name of this manufacturer, and it's not. It's James. So anyway, so this is a James, a Wayland. And what is it? Well, it is a traditional slip joint, a modern slip joint, if you like. It is a true slip joint. You can see here there is a back spring that operates, that provides the tension, with a half stop, running on phosphor bronze washers, very nice feeling, and it is a nail nick opening. So a non-locking knife, there are places where that's a good thing, traditional slip joint. This particular one has black micarta scales. There are a couple of other options available. There's a wood and a G10 scale, if I remember correctly. I probably would have bought the wood, because it really looks nice in photos, but it was out of stock in the supplier that serves my area, and I do like micarta, so I went with that. Let's talk about the size. This is 175 millimeters long, open. What does that mean? Well, International Standard Scale. It's less than a pocket calculator, or about 0.9 pocket calculators. And if we compare it to some other things, well, I usually compare knives, of course, to the Mini Griptilian. So the James is about 3 millimeters longer than a Mini Griptilian, so say the same size, more or less. Interesting one, if I put it next to a Terrain 365 Otter, and if you ignore this hideous wire bail at the end of the Otter is 1 millimeter longer, so it's more or less the same size. And the reason I thought I'd mention the comparison to the Otter is that when they're closed, they look remarkably similar in body style. So it's more or less the same size as the Otter. And to use a more familiar knife, I set it next to a Chris Reeve small Sebenza. Within a fraction of a millimeter, it is the same length as the small Sebenza. So that size of knife, just a comfortable mid-sized knife. The weight, it is fairly heavy. It's 79 grams, which is not a flyweight. It's fairly heavy. It's a little more than the Mini Griptilian. It's, compared to another traditional slip joint, this is a Benchmade proper. It's 10 grams more than a proper, or 20 grams, I guess, more than a proper. This 79, call it 80. This is 60 grams. Now, this is carbon fiber scales, so that's a big part of the reason. You know, this has partial titanium and then micarta. So anyway, not a flyweight knife. It is a couple of grams lighter than the small Sebenza, but only a couple of grams. So mid-size, mid-weight knife. The blade is interesting. The blade is exactly 3 inches long, so in places where 3 inches is important, it's precisely that. The shape of the blade is interesting. Again, a bit of confusion. Is this a Wharncliffe blade or a sheep's foot blade? A bit of ambiguity on their website. They seem to officially call it a sheep's foot. However, in a diagram on their website that shows kind of, you know, one of the designer's early sketches, it's labeled a Wharncliffe. And, you know, when you first glance at it, it sure looks like a Wharncliffe, you know, straight bottom. Except it turns out it isn't 100% straight. I'm not going to, but if you put a straight edge against that, there is a very slight up curve to the blade. And that, meeting a down curved end, technically makes it a sheep's foot, which is what they call it in the part of their website that looks the most official. I might call it a Wharncliffe that once saw a sheep out of a car window or something. But so anyway, we'll call it a sheep's foot blade. A very Wharncliffe sheep's foot blade. Oh, the blade is S35 VN steel, which of course is a classic great steel. Same steel, as it happens, as this older model small Sebenza 31, a fine steel that I like very much. And this particular blade finish is a high polish. Just let me get a cloth here, wipe all the fingerprints off it, and we're going to come back to comment on that. And it is a high polish blade. So I guess technically it's still a satin blade, but very highly polished satin finish. So a pretty blade. The body is titanium underlings, and there's a titanium end cap, and then scale fills here. These are black micarta. There is no pocket clip. There is a very conspicuous lanyard hole. And it's worth mentioning, the lanyard hole has a bushing all the way through it, which means that the lanyard, if you put one in, is not exposed to the blade. It's completely protected by the bushing, and that's a good thing. How about ambidextrousness? Ambidextrositude. Yes, 100%. Literally, nail nick on both sides is identical. Slip joint opening, no lock mechanism to fumble with. It is identical on both sides, so a fully ambidextrous knife. And manufacturing, well, it says on their website, designed in Oregon, made in China. I've not been able to find out who in China makes it. Someone suggested maybe Kai, but in any case, designed in Oregon, made in China, and I will say made well. Really, really nice tolerances, manufacturing, fit and finish is great. A lot of nice things about this knife. Let's go through some of those. What do I like? Well, I'm going to start with something really dumb and shallow, but when I first got it and I took it out of the cardboard box, I went, wow, because it is nicely packaged. There's the package, nice, neat little cardboard. Open it up, and there's this beautiful routed wood box that the knife is sitting in. And that's just, what a nice touch. As opposed to the generic, canvas bag that so many knives come in and, internally sitting in a baggie. Just a really nice touch. It had this on top. This is the slip. So the slip serves to provide some tension when it's in its cardboard sleeve. I can't get back in there. But just, wow, really nice first impression coming out of the box. That's the piece coming out of the box. So I like that. Now that has not very much to do with its knifeness, of course, but still made a good first impression. I like the mechanism. This is a good slip joint mechanism. Good tension, not too hard to open. Not too hard to close, but hard enough that it doesn't feel like it's going to fall open or fall closed on me. And a good half stop for getting my fingers out of the way and safety. It's just a well-done slip joint mechanism. Has a traditional, comfortable look. A bit of an elegant look, too. Part of that is the micarta scales. That's a lovely finish, lovely material for knife scales. It's comfortable to hold. And it is 3D sculpted. I mean, you can see the 2 dimensions here, of course. If I turn it, though, you can see that there is a curve to the body in all 3 dimensions. And the result of that is that you have something very pleasant to hold on to. You're not holding a flat surface, with 90-degree corners. It's sculpted in every dimension, and that makes it feel good in the hand. And of course, micarta will patina over time. Now, black, not much, or black will probably wear to a lighter color as opposed to darkening from hand oils. But in any case, it will color to an uneven color over time from hand oil and handling, which makes it personal. So, like all those things. I like the fit and finish. This is well done. It's not easy to see because they're all black, but look at that joint, for example. The scales are sitting in a small inlay, and in this joint between the scale and the titanium, that is just perfectly smooth and straight, and there is no gap there, and you can just barely feel the edge. So really nice fit and finish. The blade sits perfectly centered, just really well machined and well assembled. Another neat little touch, just as an example of that. We're going to look at the nail nick here. The nail nick is a machined groove. Here, focus, autofocus. Hello, there we are. The nail nick is a machined groove, and it's not straight. There's a slight boomerang curve to the nail nick that sort of follows and reflects the curve of the end of the blade. It's a neat little design touch that makes it just that little extra measure good looking. It's a comfortable knife to hold. I already mentioned that. Having no clip, there is no hot spot, so it's a really comfortable knife to hold. A useful blade shape. I've said many times I really like the classic drop point blades for being pretty, but honestly it's a useful blade shape. Lots of almost straight cutting surface for your Amazon boxes, and a good pointy end for piercing Amazon boxes. So can't really complain about the blade shape. And a final thing that I really like comes with a slip. Here it is. So this is a knife with no pocket clip. This is meant to sit in your pocket. I've often mentioned that when a knife is in my pocket, I worry about it getting marred by jangling around my car keys and everything. So this comes with a slip, a nice slip, and that's how it generally goes in my pocket. Now, the neat thing about this slip is it's not leather. The several other knives I have that come with slips are always leather slips. This is some kind of fabric. I think it's felt, or it's felt-like, which is soft and sits nicely in the pocket, and I suspect is cheaper than leather. So for those manufacturers that sell clipless knives and don't supply a clip, if the expense of a leather slip, don't supply a slip. If the expense of the leather slip is part of it, well, look at this. I assume this is cheaper than leather, and it's probably less offensive to vegans too, as an extra bonus. So, Lion Steel and Benchmade and others, pay attention. It's possible to put a simple, inexpensive slip in with a knife, and I'm glad that they did. A couple of minor things that I don't like. You've already seen me refer to one. The highly polished blade is beautiful when it's clean, but being highly polished, boy, is it a fingerprint magnet. I've got it. I'm oily. I've got it all oiled up again. Oozing charm from every pore, he oiled his way across the floor. So there, I've polished it, and the next time I touch it, I'm going to have these hideous fingerprints on it again, and I'm just finding I'm obsessively polishing the blade. So I don't know what I want them to do about that. I like the polished blade very much. I just don't like the fingerprints. Maybe slightly more satin, or maybe me being a little less obsessive. I don't know what the best solution is. Final thing I'll mention that I don't like, not common, or not unique to this knife, but not that common for expensive knives, is that you can't disassemble it, or at least I haven't been able to figure out how. There are no exposed screws anywhere, Now, that's a good thing because it makes it beautiful. But there is no way that I can find to take this thing apart. So maintenance is going to be restricted to what I can do from the outside, which basically means cleaning pocket lint out of there with a Q-tip now and then, and the occasional drop of oil into the washer area. But I really would prefer a knife that I can take apart and maintain occasionally when that seems like the right thing to do. Maybe there's a way to get this thing apart that I haven't figured out yet. I mean, I'm not going to pry away at it with a screwdriver just to see if these things will come off. So I think I'm going to call it a non-maintainable knife. And I wish it somehow was both maintainable and retained this beauty of no external screws. I know that I can't have both, but nobody says you have to be reasonable on your wish list. So a lot of things I like about this knife. Let's reflect that by going through my internationally unknown knife rating system. We'll start with the NTGK rating for non-threatening gentleman's knife, and we'll look at non-threatening first. Well, the good news is largely the result of being a slip joint is that it is not a scary opening knife. You have to open it slowly and with two hands. There's no way to flick it open that makes people go, ah, switchblade. The other thing I'll mention is that the opening is silent. So, well, okay, not silent, but it's not the snap of a front flipper that, again, makes people go, oh my God, a switchblade. This opens like Grandpa's jackknife opened, like my Boy Scout knife opened, and it brings to people a feeling of nostalgia. You know, oh, Grandpa had one of those. Not a feeling of, oh my God, this guy has a switchblade with him. It's also a simple design. Slip joints are about as simple as they get. Simple shape, simple appearance. The blade is not stabby looking, even though there is quite a point there, by the way. But not being a clip point or a spear point, it doesn't look like it was designed to stab things, and that disarms its frighteningness a little bit. And on the bad side for non-threatening, I can't really think of anything. I'd give it an A+ as non-threatening. As a gentleman's knife, it's elegant, simple, elegant shape, premium materials, titanium, S35VN. Micarta isn't necessarily a premium material. It can be sort of coarse and shaggy, but this is sanded fine, almost polished. So premium materials, understated. There's very little writing on the knife. The pocket slip is a really nice touch. So I mean, these are all things that make it good, pocket-friendly, and attractive as a curio to have in your pocket. And for the negative of gentleman's knife, again, I can't think of anything. I'm going to give it an A+. So overall, as an NTGK, A+ as a non-threatening gentleman's knife. Now, how about a KN rating, which is what will my knife nerd friends think? Well, the pros are the materials. Titanium, micarta, S35VN is good steel. The mechanism is a really nicely done slip joint. Just feels good to open and close. And the cons are that, well, some knife nerds just don't like slip joints because it's not a fidget toy. You can't flick it open. You can close it with one hand, but I wouldn't. So, some knife nerds just don't like that. And I've heard a few knife nerds say that the James brand knives are a little pricey for what you get. Now, having my first one in my hand, I don't agree with that. I think this one is worth the ask. But, I know some knife nerds who would rather have a flipper, something that they can play with, and would be just slightly less than perfectly impressed. The knife nerds that I sort of care about and hang around with wouldn't feel that way. I'm going to give it an A as a knife nerd rating. And finally, the CMR, the cut myself rating. Well, I'm going to give it an A+. Now again, normally I give knives an A if I haven't cut myself. End of story. But this, as a well-done slip joint with a good half stop, just feels inherently safe, and I think I am unlikely to cut myself unless I do something really monumentally stupid. So I'm going to give it an A+ to reflect that. So in summary, this is a beautifully designed and executed modern slip joint. It's nice to look at, really comfortable and effective to hold, and a fit and finish that just makes me proud to own it. I'm really pleased to have it in my collection. It is my first James, and it will not be my last. It's made a really good impression on me. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time. And a reminder, it's going to be more than a week, because we're down to real time now, but thanks for coming along.